SuperTalk Mississippi media production.
Looking for an affordable new home? Wyndham Mobile Homes is what you need. Discover all our spacious models, perfect for every lifestyle. Your dream home is waiting. Visit Wyndham Mobile Homes in Corinth today or online at wyndham-homes.com.
MidDays with Gerard Gibert is on the air. MidDays with Gerard Gibert is powered by C Spire. Power your home or business with C Spire Fiber. To learn more, visit supertalk.fm/C Spire. C Spire Fiber powers SuperTalk Mississippi. Get ready to go beyond the headlines and join a meaningful conversation with people from around the state. You're listening to MidDays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to MidDays, SuperTalk Mississippi. I'm your host, Gerard Gibert, along with Rhino in the Element Wealth Studio, guiding you through the middle of your day with facts, fodder, and fine music on this
Friday, y'all.
We've made it through another week, and them legislators, they're going home. Whew, good deal, huh? Can't make laws. I went down there after the show yesterday, visited a bit. In the Senate, they had adjourned, and they are out of town, man. Back in Monday. The House gavelled in, I believe, briefly this morning. Of course, this is kind of that lull in the session when the respective houses are considering legislation. They got transported via the Rhino-appointed procession down the hall, and that's what they're working on. So next week, it'll get a little more hectic as we approach the old deadline, right? That's the progression of the legislative session. The deadline it's next Thursday, I believe, right? That's when each house must take up and do something with the bills that come from the opposite side of the Capitol. I think it's next Thursday, if I'm not mistaken. I don't have the schedule in front of me. And then it gets really fun when those that make it and survive through both sides without markup go to the governor, and he can either choose to veto if he so chooses. He can sign enacting those measures into law, or he can just sit on it, not do anything, in which case, our law, Rhino, 5 business days, I think, the measure would automatically become law. Is the way our rules in Mississippi work. So that's what's going on at the.
I wanted to make sure I got it right because it's Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday are all technically separate deadline days.
Okay.
Wednesday is the deadline for original floor action.
Yeah.
On appropriation revenue bills in their own house.
Yeah.
So that's one deadline. Thursday is the deadline for reconsideration and passage of appropriation and revenue bills originating in their own house.
Okay.
And then Friday is the deadline to dispose of the motions to reconsider.
Okay, gotcha. So that's right. We've passed the general bill phase. That's the point. We're in this appropriations revenue phase, budgeting phase, if you will, and that's what they're taking up. So I ran into a member yesterday, Rhino, in the hall. This just cracked me up. In the house there. Not going to say who. Not necessary, not really germane here. And said, Gerard, we just voted on a bunch of appropriations bills, and no presenting member provided any numbers, but it was appropriations bills. We're not surprised at that, though. That's kind of the way that stuff works. So, the big news, however, that literally just hit the wire this morning out of Washington is the old Supreme Court. They have ruled on the president's, he says it's his favorite word in the dictionary, tariffs. And so they have ruled that his tariffs are not legal, that his emergency powers were a bit exceeded and crossed over the line with respect to the executive branch's authority to impose tariffs. Wow. So the average effective tariff rate right now is currently about 17%. That's the highest since the early 1930s. But the Supreme Court came out with their decision, a 6-3 vote, 170-page report. So I'm sorry to tell you, I haven't read it all just yet. It was just published about, an hour ago, hour and a half or so? Earlier this morning, I was going through my normal daily routine of reviewing all the news in my inbox when, boop, I saw that notification pop up from one of the news outlets that I track and have set to provide notifications. And then behind that, the other 4 or 5 that I have set, they all popped as well. So a number of reports and analyses. I don't think the president has offered any statement at this point, right, Rhino? Because that's...
not that I've seen.
Yeah, that will be all over the news, of course. He will likely publish his statement, his reaction initially on his Truth Social platform. I'm going to go out on a limb here and say he's not going to be happy about this. And he has been warning that if the Supreme Court should rule this way, it could be devastating for the economy. The tariffs in question are those levied by our president under the International Emergency Economic Powers Act of 1977. I was a freshman in college when that occurred. The Trump administration used what's called the acronym, the IEEPA, as a legal vehicle to impose really a broad spectrum of tariffs on a large number of this country's trading partners. Again, highest tariff rate since the early 20th century. No president, by the way, had ever used this particular law to impose tariffs. He was the first. So we shall see what the reaction will be. Now, on the markets, it's hard to tell. The reaction has been a bit sanguine, and it's hard to tell if the current market reaction is, of course, just due to the tariffs. There are a lot of other economic news. We got GDP report this morning. We also got the consumer, actually the PCE, not the CPI, but the personal consumption expenditure. I believe we got that this morning as well. So check me on that. I'm pretty sure that piece of data was released. So much information floating around today with the tariff stuff. That's just kind of dominating. Yeah, economic growth slowed in the fourth quarter. That largely due to the government shutdown in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, CPI was last week.
Yeah, okay. So we got just a flurry of information that the investment community is digesting and responding to, but this GDP figure is a big one. It's hard to tell whether or not investors say that, okay, yeah, we had a rather weak quarter from a GDP perspective, but that was due to the government shutdown. 1.4% annual rate in the fourth quarter of 2025. That's where the GDP came in at, this report this morning. So many may not realize that gross domestic product is just a measurement of economic activity in the country, does include government spending. So when the government spends less because it was shut down, which was the case, that does factor into the GDP calculation. And that's why we had a rather moderate, below normal sort of growth rate relative to the prior 3 quarters of the year. So I'm sure the president will weigh in on that as well, this report that just came out this morning. So the problem with it, is that economists, even factoring in the federal government shutdown, the longest in our history, by the way, which occurred in the fourth quarter, they expected a 2.5% GDP annualized growth. So coming in at 1.4% is a bit disappointing. Now, at the same time, most prognosticators believe that the Fed is not going to touch the benchmark interest rate for a while. That's not looking good either. And that's important because, of course, from a consumer perspective, your mortgages and longer-term installment loans, et cetera, are tied to the 10-year Treasury, which can often be influenced by and closely connected to the benchmark interest rate controlled by the Federal Reserve. So this is quite the slowdown from the rather blistering rate registered over the summer in the second and third quarter, a 4.4% annualized rate of growth in this country's economy. So what's interesting about this, Rhino, of course, it will be super entertaining. We got the old State of the Union address coming up. I'm thinking the president might have a thing or two to say about this. But you see who is offering the rebuttal response. We'll take care of that on the other side of the break. Kasey Dickson, Director of Marketing.
Hey, this is Bob.
This segment of Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by Covington County Hospital in Collins, where your health matters.
Bring it on! Middays with Gerard Gibert.
It is on.
On SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Ground control to
Ziggy Stardust there. The great David Bowie.
Ground control to
We're back with you in the Element Wealth studio. Go to myelementwealth.com or call 601-957-6006 to let Element Wealth help you find your balance between income growth and guarantees. The C Spire text line is wide open, 601-879-4395. The markets, the Dow up. It was actually down pre-market. It's up about 80 points. And the NASDAQ, all the indexes are in the green, at least for right now. You never know where it's going to close. That's always the kind of a guessing game, of course. The traders are kind of squirrely, but right now everything's looking pretty good. The 10-year yield is up. Also, not good news for the price of your gas at the pump, I think, due to the threat of a lot of action over there in the Middle East. You see oil trending upward now above $66 a barrel. That will translate to likely some short-term increase, at least at the pump, for your price of gas. Actually, it's still at $66 even now, down 43 cents today. Yeah, so it was the PCE, Rhino, that was out this morning. The CPI, as you indicated, was last week. I knew there was major pieces of economic data, GDP for the quarter, PCE for December. Came in a little hotter than expected, and I think that's got the Fed governors running for the hills. So it's a bit confounding because their two mandates, of course, to stabilize prices. That's a fancy way of saying, hey, don't let inflation get out of control. And maximize employment. That's a fancy way of saying, don't let the unemployment rate creep up, and make sure that people are working. So they have a couple of tools to influence those economic dynamics. One, of course, the benchmark interest rate. The other is what they call open market operations, where they go out and just buy and sell bonds to influence and affect the money supply. So what's hard here for the Fed governors is, well, we got kind of a mixed picture. You got relatively weak economic growth, but you got spiking inflation. That's really a problem. And you got unemployment remaining fairly level, not too out of control. And that's why most of the so-called experts, if you could call them that, and the prognosticators, they're saying, well, we don't see the Fed easing up on the rates, even though we got a new one coming in here in May, replacing Jerome Powell. And the president, of course, has weighed in quite a bit over the last year, imploring, what does he call him, too late Jerome Powell to reduce the rates and pointing to inflation being under control, giving them the leeway, if you will, the cover to reduce rates. But there's a lot of other information playing into that as well.
And Trump wouldn't have nearly as much ammunition to aim at Jerome Powell if they hadn't cut rates right before the presidential election.
Totally agree, making it look like a completely grounded in politics move, which I do believe that's the case. I think
because if it was good enough to cut rates at that point, it's been good enough several times over now.
I would argue it's a more conducive environment today than it was then.
Easily.
Easily. Right. We were, still in the 5-6% inflation range. But he saw fit to do so because he wanted his buddy, Joe Biden, at that time, to be reelected. Not a big fan of the president. That's where it gets political, and it shouldn't. One thing you'll have to say about the Supreme Court ruling is that it does appear that, for the most part, the justices set aside politics here.
I don't think you'll be able to convince the rabid liberals and Democrats that they might have been wrong, but 2 of the 3 Trump justices went against Trump in this case.
Correct. So that also, I would say, kind of flies in the face of this. We got to pack the Supreme Court and impose term limits and all that sort of stuff. Is there any doubt, though, that it's the Supreme Court justices who were appointed by Democrat presidents that are more lawmakers in robes? Because you have a hard time finding cases where they rule opposite from the wishes of the commander-in-chief, if they're in the same party, right? But you can cite several examples where those appointed by Republican presidents have actually ruled in a way that's not seen as favorable. This is an example. Today, this happened. And there's been some statements by, I think, Justice Roberts. He noted that Trump used 2 words that were separated by 16 others in his use of the International Emergency Economic Powers Act. The 2 words being regulate and importation, to justify that he had the independent power to impose tariffs on imports from any country or any product at any rate for any amount of time. And the Justice Roberts said those words cannot bear such weight. That's his take on the whole deal. So we'll see where this goes, but at this point, it looks like the Supreme Court has ruled. Now, what's not clear at this point to me, Rhino, you may be more up to date on this, the 170-page ruling. Does this strike down all tariffs? Because that was always the question. Does this apply to all tariffs or just certain tariffs? There's reciprocal tariffs, and then there's the emergency tariffs and the punitive tariffs and all the other categories.
From what I understand, these are just the tariffs that were implemented by Trump when he came out with the big spreadsheet chart of these are the tariffs we're getting, and that kind of stuff. It's all those, even to the point where Kavanaugh listed off other laws, other statutes that Trump could utilize to impose tariffs, in his opinion. Okay.
So the Liberation Day tariffs.
Yes.
On most countries, including just a standard 10% global tariff.
I think 10% is being wiped off the board.
That's the problem. Yeah. Okay. So then the question is, are they going to have to repay? Because that was going into this decision. That's gotten a lot of attention.
That was the point made in oral arguments, and it's a point that's brought up in the opinion.
Okay. So will the government have to provide a refund to those? Because remember, American companies remit tariffs to the U.S. Treasury. Interesting. Meanwhile, over there in the Middle East, oh, man, things are heating up over there. You recall that we had Congressman Michael Guest on the program yesterday, and he flat out said, I expect to see potentially an attack on Iran prior to the State of the Union address. And we have positioned even more assets, both air assets as well as a number of naval assets in the region. We're pretty beefed up. F-22s, F-35s, those are stealthy type fighters. And just looking at a great piece in the Wall Street Journal this morning that outlines all the various air assets that we have. I got to tell you, I haven't heard of the EA-18G Growler.
Oh, yeah.
Man, that thing looks bad.
Electronic warfare.
Yeah, that thing it's exactly right. Carrier-based
if
airborne.
If it beeps or boops, it gets turned off.
It's unbelievable. Of course, familiar with the old F-15s, F-16s, the F-18, kind of a newer version of that. The F-22 Raptor is another one. It's a multi-role fighter, is how it is referred.
It's air supremacy in and of itself.
Yeah. The F-35C Lightning, F-35A Lightning, and then those Thunderbolts, also known as tank killers. Those are really something, man. Those are bad dudes when you see them coming. They just look like they're there to wreak havoc, right? Just rain hell down. So, and then we have Nimitz-class aircraft carrier, the USS Abraham Lincoln, commissioned in 1989, and just looking at all these other ships, including the USS Georgia, which is a guided missile submarine. We got a lot of stuff piled up over there, I think it's safe to say.
And if you want to see the highest def photos of all of it, China's putting it out.
Unbelievable. Of course they are.
Satellite imagery of all of it just sitting there, getting ready.
Don't you feel like this is also designed to get their attention? I absolutely do. I think this is...
But you got people still that are like, no, China's a friend. We shouldn't treat China as an adversary.
Yeah, wrong. They're totally wrong about that. Especially the way they're outfitting their all-machine, no-human military force, right? That's kind of scary. So we'll see. When we got a break right now on us. Kasey Dickson, Director of Marketing and Public Relations for Mississippi Blood Services, is up next.
From theseabrook.com. You're listening to Middays with Gerard here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Love is but a song we sing, feels the way we die.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Wealth Studio. It's our great pleasure to welcome now Kasey Dickson, Director of Marketing and Public Relations for Mississippi Blood Services. Hey, Kasey, thanks for coming on.
Thank you very much for having me. Good morning.
You bet. So, give us an update. How are we doing with respect to our blood supply in Mississippi?
It's down. We need blood donors.
All right, so tell folks where they can donate and what hours they can donate, and then tell them about the process. I know we do this all the time because there's a lot of misinformation, I would say, and misunderstanding about how easy this process is.
It is a very easy process.
And
if
painless.
You're an eligible donor.
And painless. I got to get that out there. It's a painless process as well. Go ahead, Kasey.
That is correct. Right here on Lakeland Drive, we have a collection center in Flowood that has been here and operating for a number of years. And we encourage many of the donors in the Tri-County area or anyone that's in driving distance to make the stop. Right now, the hospitals are in desperate need of multiple units of blood, primarily O's and B's. Whether you're positive or negative, we will take those for sure. But if you are another blood type and you have the ability to donate, we strongly encourage anyone to stop by. It's a simple process and painless, as you mentioned. We encourage individuals that have the ability to come and donate, make sure they've had a healthy meal before they come in and are hydrated. They'll do a small little quiz as far as a health quiz to make sure, or a health screening, to make sure they've got all of the necessary elements lined up so they can do a healthy donation. And then they'll get on one of our bed units and start the process.
Yeah. Doesn't take very long either. About how long from start to finish, Kasey?
When you get on the bed, depending on if you've had that healthy meal and you've been hydrating, the blood process of the donation can do anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour and a half, depending on the product that you were able to give during that donation.
They treat you real well, and when you're complete, you hang around just for a couple of minutes there, and they give you a snack.
Yeah, we'll make sure you got a good snack. I think we talked about it last time. Yep. We were saying Nutty Buddies are one of the favorites for most people.
That's exactly right. So is there anything in particular, any factor that you can point to as to why our blood supply is running low?
Right now, I think many individuals have been impacted by the flu.
Okay.
So the flu is going around. It's definitely impacting donations. There's been a lot of activities in the area. You've got individuals taking part in Mardi Gras. You've got the rodeo in town. You've had a lot of different things going on that have taken everybody's attention, which they shouldn't take part and enjoy those activities. But if they have that option to donate, it's truly needed. And we would greatly appreciate it if they could make a time to come and donate.
Yeah, no doubt about it. So, and you've got blood centers around the state as well, collection centers, right?
Right. We have 3 collections facilities, one here in Jackson, in Flowood, and you got one in Oxford and you one in Cleveland. We also have mobiles that we send out into the communities with some of our businesses and schools that allow us to park outside of their location to collect blood from individuals that are unable to make it to these locations.
Kasey, are there any, I know this comes up a lot when we talk to you guys from our audience, this question comes up. Are there any medical conditions that would preclude a person from donating?
Look, there's a long list of different types of medication as well as medicine or different types of procedures that individuals have gone through recently, travel. All of those elements can be reviewed from our website on our resource page. It's all outlined. You can kind of do like a Control F and find what you need and see if it's listed on there and see if that criteria is listed. If it's not, you can contact our collections facilities and ask the question to one of our phlebotomists.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. So it sounds like just due to this kind of flu outbreak we're having and all the other events we got going on, it's a double whammy. It's a combination of increased demand and dwindling supply and activity and donations, right?
That's correct. And this month, very similar to when we had the incident earlier in February and late January with the weather, we had to close some of the facilities. We've rebounded from that, but sadly, we're starting to struggle with everyone getting out. The weather's starting to get nice, but the ups and downs of the weather have impacted some of the donors with the flu or family members with the flu. They've been around it, so they don't want to expose anything. So what we've offered for this weekend, tonight we're staying open until 5. Tomorrow we normally close at 2:30 on Saturday at our Flowood location, but we're extending our hours till 5 p.m. And then on Sunday we're opening our doors from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. to see if we can get some of those individuals that haven't been able to stop by during the week because of work or other obligations and giving them an opportunity to donate during those times.
So, Kasey, Oxford, are you up and running full speed, full capacity up there? Because, of course, the weather...
Oxford and Cleveland,
okay.
Yes.
All right, because I know the weather was a huge problem, especially in Oxford, and that city is just really getting some semblance of normalcy right now.
They're starting to get back in the city itself. We were able to open the Oxford location probably after a week of being down. So we got that open as quickly as we possibly could.
Yeah. Okay. So you're good to go there. You got plenty of staff. It really short to little wait, a quick exam, nothing to it, little questionnaire, just to make sure you're all good to go from a health perspective, and then you lay down on the cot. It's very painless. The folks are very nice and very respectful and want to make sure you're good and taken care of. Then you get a little snack and you're on your way.
That's correct. That's right. And this weekend, we're actually adding today, too, a $20 visa for those individuals that are able to come in and donate. And this weekend, we have some T-shirts that we are giving out on Sunday and some tumblers that we're giving. Excuse me, the T-shirt is on Saturday and the tumbler is on Sunday. So we're also allowing triple entry into a $1,000 giveaway that we are offering for the month.
You know, we always got to bring up the late, great J.T. Williamson, of course, longtime host of the program on this air. And anytime we'd be with you guys when he was still with us, he'd typically call in and talk about how valuable it was to him when he was going through his treatment regimen. And, of course, he always was very appreciative and spoke very highly of Mississippi Blood Services. It was a critical part of his final months, really, with us. So always got to bring that up.
Yep. I'm glad you did. Yes, we are grateful that he was a big supporter of ours and helped spread the word and the need that is desperately there.
He always used to say, just wait till you're on the other side of the bag. That was kind of his favorite way of describing it, and that was painted such a powerful picture of the need for this. He, of course, greatly missed. But, Rhino, I'll never forget, every time we're at Blood Services and talking to the good folks there, he would always call in and talk about that. Always very complimentary. Mm-hmm. Very important to him and his family, no doubt about it. All right, so tell the folks again, before you go, Kasey, the locations and the hours.
The location is right here on Lakeland Drive. It's 115 Tree Street. We're open till 5 p.m. tonight. We'll open our doors on Saturday at 7:30 a.m. and close them at 5 p.m. And on Sunday for whole blood donations, we're opening our doors at 10 a.m. and closing at 5 p.m.
Got it.
No appointment necessary.
Got it. And the folks will take good care of you. I've personally been through it. Nothing to it. So thank you, Kasey. We appreciate you coming on today and giving us an update. Thank you so much, Kasey.
Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it.
You bet. All right, so that's something I'll never forget, Rhino, is the late, great JT always calling in and making that statement, right? You know, you never know till you're on the other side of the bag. He was always so appreciative, and he will be remembered for his kind words about Mississippi Blood Services, a very critical and important part of providing health care here in the state of Mississippi. And, Rhino, speaking of which, the status of UMMC, still down, right? Still canceling everything. Man, it's just not a good deal. And, you know, they're all stressed out, working around the clock, trying to get this thing resolved. But it's not an easy problem to fix.
No, not at all.
It's just not. And I know a lot of people out there thinking, well, why don't you just do this? And I know, and I get it. But, man, until you've been into the details of how complex all that is, whew, it takes a lot of smart people to figure this out. And make no mistake, as we've said so many times, the bad guys are really smart too, unfortunately. They know exactly what the heck they're doing. They know how to shake down businesses and individuals to get money. That's what it's all about. We're taking a break. Another segment remains in this hour here on Middays. We've got SuperTalk Mississippi News multimedia journalist Caleb Sailors on the program at 11:20. Stay with us.
We all hear the ring.
Now back to Middays with Gerard here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
We're back with you in the Element Wealth studio. So, yeah, next week we got the State of the Union address to be delivered by President Trump. And, of course, the party opposite the party in the White House typically delivers a rebuttal right after the State of the Union is aired and delivered. This year it's Virginia Governor Abigail Spanberger. Won't that be something? I can't wait for that, honestly. Do they honestly believe this would help their cause in the midterms? Because that's really what all the focus is going to be on. I just don't see it.
Sometimes I feel like they just put names in a hat and pull one out.
Jeez.
Because we had, the Kennedy guy 3 years ago now?
Yeah. That's right. So.
No, it wasn't 3 years ago. It was the third year of Trump's term.
Third. Maybe. That's right.
He didn't go anywhere.
No.
But everybody was talking about, this might be the launch pad for his political campaigns.
That was weak. Well, so just so you know, whomever delivers the rebuttal is selected by the leaders in the Congress. In this case, Democratic Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries and old Chuck Schumer over there on the Senate side. And Senator Schumer, isn't he something? He says Spanberger has always put service over politics. She is nothing but a political animal. Everything that comes out of her dang mouth, it just sounds like a litany, an encyclopedia of woke. That's what comes out of her mouth. It's so sad to see a complete reversal of all the progress made under Governor Glenn Youngkin, who was swept into office in Virginia, oddly enough, because he just came out and spoke the truth about all the craziness that was going on, mainly in the public schools in Virginia, where residents were attempting to address school boards in Loudoun County. That's kind of the one I remember the most. And they would show up and say, "What in the world are you guys doing in the classroom to our kids? Sit down, shut up," right? You're not recognized, and just trying to just put them down, not let them have the opportunity, in my view, a right to address the people in charge of running the schools that they pay for and their kids attend. And Youngkin came out and said, "Yeah, this is crazy. And we're going to change the environment in public schools here in Virginia." And as soon as Spanberger gets elected, she reverses all that. In fact, she intensifies all the woke crap. So I don't know what the heck old Chuck Schumer's talking about. Spanberger, in a statement after she learned she was going to deliver the rebuttal, said, "Americans expect and deserve, quote, leaders who are working hard to deliver for them." What does that even mean? What do they mean when they say that? It's just empty red meat rhetoric that really amounts to nothing. So that's who's going to be doing the old rebuttal. Now, the two minority leaders have also announced, last week they did, that Senator Alex Padilla, the Democrat from California, he's going to deliver the Spanish language version of the Democratic response. Oh, aren't you excited about that?
The only excitement I have about that is plugging that one and Spanberger's into an AI and just seeing if they're the same speech, just translated.
That's a good point. We'll have to do that. Schumer says that Padilla's message will be a, quote, sharp contrast to President Trump's chaos and self-dealing. What the hell do you think you do, Schumer? Every single day since you've been in Washington. And, there's all kinds of video floating around about how, as a younger senator, he talked about the need to secure the borders and protect against an onslaught of illegal immigrants filling up the country. And now he's just reversed in an effort to pander and appeal to his base. Unbelievable.
Yeah, if you remember under Bush, when Bush was an immigrant-friendly Republican, Democrats hated
That's absolutely true. Yeah, that's absolutely true. So, and of course, there was a time when Joe Biden stood up for the rule of law when he was a junior senator there from Delaware, but not anymore.
In fairness, he said a lot of things he didn't really mean.
That's true, or can remember as well. I just find all that rather fascinating. Hakeem Jeffries, the minority leader in the House, says, "We're not going to Donald Trump's house. He's coming to our house." Oh, isn't that profound? It's my view that you don't let anyone ever run you off of your block. Fox News, Super Talk News coming up next. Stay with us.
Hour of Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by the Mississippi Business Journal. Visit msbusinessjournal.com. Scott Coopwood, publisher and president.
And now, another hour of the talk that keeps Mississippi talking. Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Begin your transition now.
Now on Super Talk Mississippi.
Welcome back to Hour 2 of Middays. We are live from the Element Wealth Studio on this
Friday, y'all.
So, UMMC, still shut down, still grappling with this ransomware attack. Man, I really do hate that is going on, and hopefully they get it resolved, because a bunch of folks are stressed out that had their various medical treatments postponed. And it's already stressful when you're going through medical treatment and you want to get it done and get it over with and have some peace of mind and relief. Man, I know they're working their rears off to get everything restored.
You know who's also still working their rears off?
Who's that?
All the medical students at UMMC.
Why is that?
One of the latest updates, or the last update that I saw from the UMMC on their Twitter account.
Yep.
The very last thing it said was in-person class schedules remain normal.
Oh, really?
So everybody else at UMMC's got unscheduled days off, but the students are still going to class.
Well, they don't need the EHR system, right, to go to class. So it's a little different. All of their stuff's fine. Well, get your butt in the classroom. That's what you're supposed to be doing. No problem on that, for sure. Keep on going. We've talked a little bit here on the program about the Trump accounts, and we were fortunate to have the chief counsel to the Secretary of the Treasury on the program a couple of weeks ago discussing that. The president this was the week after the big storm, I remember, because we got invited to host a show up there at the Department of Treasury to, again, promote these Trump accounts. But unfortunately, the weather got in the way, and we weren't able to make it. But we did get somebody call in the show from the Department of Treasury to, once again, just discuss and share the details of those accounts. So you can go ahead, by the way, folks, if you have someone in your household that qualifies, you can go ahead and sign up now. The accounts will be active in July of this year. But you can actually, so the website's up and running and available to sign up now. If a child is born between January 1st of 2025 and December 31st, 2028, the federal government, of course, will seed the account with $1,000. If, however, though, you still can open an account up for a child, even though they must be under 18, by the way, and they must have a Social Security number. But even though if they're not born between those years that we just mentioned, you can still open up the account and contribute to it, and the gains are tax-free during the period of the account just being active. So you could contribute up to $5,000 a year until the child reaches the age of 18. And then at that point, you can withdraw for certain purposes. I believe it's education, right, Rhino? Buying a house. Well, there was one other in there.
Healthcare.
Healthcare, that's right. Yep. So those three purposes, you can withdraw the funds on a tax-free basis, right, as I recall. So
any other usage, it's taxed just like income.
Yeah, it's just ordinary income upon the withdrawal. And there's some restrictions on there have to be the funds have to be invested in index funds, so you can't just go crazy out there and buy a bunch of stocks and bonds and things like that. You invest in these fairly stable index funds, which of course own stocks and bonds, but a large, wide range of those. And that's how the investment aspect of it works. And you can also place those accounts in the custody of a wealth manager who could handle that for you in accordance with the rules, or you can do it yourself, either way. But the main point is, I think, that wasn't widely understood is that even though your child is not born between these years, you still qualify to sign up for the account and contribute to it. The only difference is you don't get the $1,000 from the government. To qualify for the $1,000 seed money, child has to be born between 25 and 28. But if they're under 18, you can still create the account, contribute to it. And we're seeing a pretty strong wave across the country of private companies because the family can contribute to the account, or individuals can, and a company can. By the way, the IRS hasn't released the guidance on the total $5,000 limit per year, of which $2,500 can be from your employer. There's some discussion that, well, maybe it was intended to be on top of the $5,000 limit from the non-employer donors. The employer can tack on another $2,500. The IRS still hadn't hit us with a guidance on that. Checked that out yesterday. But more than likely it's thought, yeah, the $2,500 is part of the $5,000. So total of $5,000 a year that could be placed in those accounts, invested in those index funds, available for withdrawal by the age of 18, as long as the monies are then used for education, health care, and housing, then tax-free. The withdrawal is. So that's a good thing, man. That's a pretty good deal.
And you're also seeing some private companies, some of the larger private companies, offering to extend the time period for the seed money.
Yeah, that's right.
Where if you're an employee and you've had a child in the last decade, they're going to put $1,000 in there.
Yeah. And, of course, we've seen some individuals, some philanthropists that have also stepped up. That's also possible, right? So Michael Dell, I think, really the first one to come out with a significant contribution, he and his wife. And then I saw a big wealth manager this morning on the Business Channel real early talking about making a significant contribution. And he is really pressing hard on a lot of his wealthy peers to also make contributions. I think this is great. Isn't this so much better than government? I've just always thought this is a superior model. You got government kind of creating and establishing this vehicle. Okay, that's great. That's what they're good at, something they can do across the nation easily. But it's the private sector that steps up and does something good. I love it. That's the way it should be. Not just a bunch of stupid government money dropped out of helicopters that, is going to be screwed up.
Yeah, the notion of noblesse oblige is much easier pill to swallow when it's not mandated by law.
Totally, 100%. People will step up. They really will. They like to participate in things like this. And they like giving back. Despite what the left says, that, oh, no, all those billionaires and those rich people, they're so greedy and they've just made all their money off the backs of the hardworking employees. Horse hockey. It's just not true. I like to always respond to that assertion that comes from the left with NVIDIA, where 75% of their employees are millionaires and about 25% of them are worth more than $20 million. Oh, but he doesn't share the wealth, though, right? Horse hockey. Name another company, and they've been incredibly profitable and blessed, no doubt. But it wasn't by accident. They created something that produces enormous value, is very innovative. Jensen Huang and his couple of partners. Hey, these chips we built to run these video games seem to be pretty good at this artificial intelligence thing. Let's do a little tuning and tweaking. Boom. Next thing you know, he's got a $150 billion company that last year threw off $90 billion in net income. But he shared the wealth. Despite what the left says, he shared the wealth quite generously, quite handsomely, with 75%. And the vast majority of them, Rhino, are under 40. On top of that, they're set for life. That's the way it should work. They hate that. You did it without government. We can't have that, right? That's what they hate. Because that's where they get some twisted, perverse feeling of self-worth. No, look what I did. I passed these laws. I created these programs. I borrowed money and sent it to you, which is what all those programs do. That doesn't create wealth, you stupid bureaucrats. What Jensen Huang and his partners did, that creates wealth. Guess what? All the people that gripe about that, they're using what he made and don't even know it every single day. But I have an idea about these Trump accounts with respect to the state of Mississippi. We'll get to that later on in the program and some changes we could make in our tax laws. But right now we're taking a break. When we come back, Caleb Sailors with the news department. Stay with us.
You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert, here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Wealth Studio. We're pleased to welcome now Caleb Sailors, Multimedia Journalist, SuperTalk Mississippi News. What's happening there, Caleb?
Gerard, got a crazy story. Let me move this microphone closer to me. Out of North Mississippi. So you never know what kind of hidden treasures you're going to find in small town Mississippi. And one of them was discovered in the town of Grenada at the GameStop in Grenada, right off Highway 8 up there. A man named David Avon from North Mississippi was a big baseball card collector in the 80s, early 90s, got married, settled down, and was like, hey, maybe I should put this passion aside and take care of my family first. Well, a few years back, he started getting back into collecting baseball cards. Well, he struck gold at the Grenada GameStop. He found a 2025 Topps Chrome Paul Skeens card, which obviously Paul Skeens, the Cy Young and Rookie of the Year winning pitcher for the Pittsburgh Pirates. And he put this card up for auction yesterday. It sold for $58,800. It's a lot of money for a baseball card.
That's a lot.
And I spoke with David on the phone yesterday. Really nice man. And he told me that he's going to use that money to pay off his daughter's student loans. And so his daughter graduated in music education at Ole Miss and is now a band teacher in Arkansas. Or band director in Arkansas.
That's pretty cool.
So that's a good feel-good story here. And maybe I could tease some of that for Rebecca at 2 o'clock. Good things with Rebecca Turner. But one of the cool things happening in Mississippi amid all the political chaos that we've got going on happening at the state capitol and amid, everything happening in the sports world or any kind of drama, we could always share the good stories, too, happening in Mississippi.
Yeah. Well, what you got that's going on down at the legislature? You cover anything this week? Write about anything?
So I know you've talked to either you or Richard talked to State Senator Jeremy England about this one bill. I know Representative Lee Yancey has been on as well about a bill that would require law enforcement officials, local government officials in Mississippi to cooperate with ICE or federal officials when enforcing immigration law. There was House Bill 538. It passed in the House with very little support from Democrats in the House. They kind of espouse concerns that, well, what if ICE breaks the law? How can our local officials intervene if it's illegal for them to interfere with their duties? Well, this bill is in the Senate now, and Senator Jeremy England said he's got an appetite to pass it, and hopefully, for him, he's saying hopefully his chamber will take it up. But he basically said, yeah, this is just basic. We're going to support our federal officials, the federal immigration officers, in enforcing laws. I mean, that's just basic to him. And I know that some of the pushback stems from situations in Minneapolis where American citizens have been killed by immigration officers, and that's brought some people to have some pushback on ICE's presence or potential presence in Mississippi or any of the other southern states. But to a lot of the Republican lawmakers in our state capital, they're saying this is a no-brainer. If ICE wants to come in here and detain someone who's suspected of living in the United States illegally, especially a violent criminal, we shouldn't impede there.
Seems like it's a federal matter,
right?
And we shouldn't obstruct and interfere. That's exactly what happened in Minnesota, and that ended up in tragedy.
Right. And another federal matter, or one that's become a federal matter, is the FBI is investigating a cyber attack at UMC, the University of Mississippi Medical Center. I got the acronym first before I said it out, but crazy situation there. Officials at the university hospital have said they've been in contact with the alleged hackers, that they've talked to them, and I'm not sure if they're asking for money. I'm sure that there's a ransom or something there that they're wanting financial compensation to get the system back up and running. But I do know that the Mississippi Department of Homeland Security and the FBI are investigating. As of now, the hospital is only taking care of current patients and emergency patients. So if you have any kind of elective or outpatient procedures that can wait, they're saying
rescheduling.
We're not doing those today. Yeah. And UMC officials did warn that this could be it already is a multi-day, but it could extend even further and more days as we get this figure out. There's really no timetable as to when systems will be restored. But this is affecting their website. This is affecting a lot of phone lines. I mean, they're having to go back to the basics of the hospital. I have some friends that are in med school at UMC. I know some nurses up there too. They're having to go back to pen and paper. They don't have their iPads or their devices. They're going back to the old school methods of charting everything with pen and paper. And hopefully, though, for the hospital that sensitive information isn't leaked, because this is a huge risk for the hospital, Gerard. If patient information gets leaked, even if it's done by a hacker, the hospital runs the risk of getting sued. And so our hope is that no sensitive information gets leaked for patients or employees or anybody, and that they can get systems up and running, because this is the largest hospital in Mississippi and has clinics all throughout the state.
Yeah, and a bunch of employees that rely on the place as well. 10,000 last time I checked.
Right.
So, yeah, it's a giant operation. It's a very complex operation, and they have very sophisticated IT systems. I haven't been involved in that going back to the 80s, honestly.
Absolutely.
So, watched all that grow and expand. Hopefully they get a resolution here quick. But what this does show us is that anybody's subject to it. Even the best plans, the best technology that can be installed to protect against these malicious intrusions.
Right. This happened to Singing River on the coast a few years ago, or a couple of years ago, and it was a big deal, and they had sensitive information get compromised, and thankfully they were able to resolve everything. But, these attacks happen to smaller mom-and-pop places all the time, but to your point, I mean, it can happen to anybody.
Bad guys are good.
Yeah, they are.
And what they do here, just for our audience, and I know, Rhino, you and I have talked about it, is this methodology, this tactic really is what it is, known as dual extortion. And so you don't know about it, but before they launched the ransomware attack, they've been quietly, secretly transferring your data. They've gained access to your data, penetrated it. You don't know. They've been transferring it to another site where they control it and they store it. And if your response to their ransomware demand is, hey, we're just going to restore for backup, we're not going to pay you, They say, well, if you don't, we're going to release all your patient information to the entire internet world. And you don't know if they have it or not, right? But that's the threat they usually use.
And you can't just assume they don't have it.
Yeah.
No, you can't.
Man.
I'll go back to feel-good stories in Mississippi.
Please.
Josh Hubbard, a standout, sensational basketball player at Mississippi State, he was rewarded for his work on the court this week, had a career-high 46 points in a big win versus Auburn on Wednesday night. Then the next day, yesterday, Hubbard got the Coach Wooden Cup Award, which goes to the most outstanding community servant in college basketball, named after John Wooden, the 10-time
Wizard of Westwood.
Oh, no doubt, the 10-time.
Never be equaled.
Yeah, no. Who's winning 10 national championships?
No.
Again, nobody.
Yeah.
Well, Josh Hubbard has done a lot with the Make-A-Wish Foundation. He's every three-point shot he's made, which he's made 78 this year. He's Mississippi State's all-time three-point scorer now. He broke that record 2 games ago against Ole Miss, kind of fittingly there. But he's giving money to the Make-A-Wish Foundation. He's partnered up with Children's of Mississippi. He actually spent some time in the Children's Hospital in Mississippi as a child with some sort of illness. I can't remember specifically what it was, and so that's kind of a place that's near and dear to his heart. So he spent time with patients at Children's of Mississippi, and he also teamed up with Lieutenant Governor Delbert Hosemann last year in trying to curb Mississippi's chronic absenteeism rates.
Yeah.
You know, that's been a huge crusade of the lieutenant governors. Every time he gives a stump speech at Neshoba, every time he appears on our radio programs, every time he speaks to the public in general, he's saying, look, before we get into tax policy, before we get into our budget, before we get into anything, we got to make sure our kids are in school because they're the future of our state. We got to make sure that they're getting an education and that they're not missing class time. And so Josh Hubbard, who's a more prominent athlete in Mississippi, more well-known in Mississippi than him right now, other than maybe Trinidad Chambliss. Well, Josh Hubbard collaborates with the Lieutenant Governor to help say, hey, kids, it's cool to be in school. Hey, kids, it's important. Trust me. Look where I am right now. Look how successful I am. It's because I was in school every day. Hubbard, of course, Madison Ridgeland Academy grad, I think he's the leading high school scorer in Mississippi as well. Just a sensational athlete, standout basketball player, but also a really good human being on top of that, too. And he got rewarded for his work off the court, too.
I think that's a good way to deliver that message, coming from someone like him who can speak from experience that they look up to. I think we ought to have more of that to address some of these underlying cultural challenges we have in our state. It's not going to come from lawmakers in the Capitol in suits, right? That ain't going to do it. So.
I remember being in school and when we would have our local state senator or state representative come to the class, or even the governor. At one point, Haley Barber came when I was in school. It was pretty cool. But it was like, oh, that's cool. It's the governor. But when an athlete came, it was like, oh, that's really cool. Even when it was the local high school football quarterback who would come in the classroom and read to us, that was the coolest day ever.
We need to get the rap artists to make rap music about staying in school, behaving yourself, and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, get some more Schoolhouse Rock back in and stuff.
All right. Before you go, John Wooten, one of his books, A Game Plan for Life, my favorite book. Check it out sometime. His one of his famous quotes, and he's got many that has kind of stuck with me, is talent is God-given. Be humble. Fame is man-given. Be grateful. But conceit is self-given. Be careful.
Words of wisdom right there, and I'll heed all of that, Gerard.
Caleb Sailors, multimedia journalist, SuperTalk Mississippi News. We're coming right back. Stay with us.
From the Seabrook.com, Mississippi Days with Gerard Gibert.
Let's do this. On SuperTalk Mississippi. Let's go.
Face lies the snake. Yeah.
We're back with you in the Element Wealth studio. We appreciate you joining us today. I know we've got lots of text on the text line. I shall get to those in just a second. Appreciate you weighing in. Want to pass this on. Corey DeAngelis, who is the president, who President Trump has called a fighter for parental rights. We had him on the program not too long ago. He was in town. He's an evangelist for education freedom. And he's also a senior fellow at Americans for Fair Treatment. He was just appointed to the Heritage Foundation. He's a research fellow. So congratulations to Corey. He sent me a text on that yesterday, informing me of that. I think he is perfect for that. He's a best-selling author of The Parent Revolution, Rescuing Your Kids from the Radicals Ruining Our Schools. So he is connecting up with the Heritage Foundation, a research fellow. That's a big deal. They, of course, the Heritage Foundation, known as one of the premier conservative think tanks and policy advocates in the country. Corey, of course, like we said, a huge spokesperson, evangelist for education freedom, was here with the Mississippi Center for Public Policy a couple of weeks ago, talking about it, along with Leah Ferretti, also with Mississippi Ready, been on the program before. Lindsey Beckham with the Moms for Liberty organization here in the state of Mississippi. All three of those individuals addressed a group that attended the event hosted by Mississippi Center for Public Policy. Unfortunately, the Republicans in the state of Mississippi don't take too kindly to education freedom. I know we've talked a lot about that here on the program. The Mississippi Today and the folks on the left side of the aisle, the Parents Campaign, and I don't know, all these other organizations that are anti-education freedom, they're all mad, Rhino, because the Children's Promise Act, that is a law that's been in effect for several years that just allows individuals and organizations, businesses in Mississippi to contribute to various organizations and receive, involving children, and receive a tax credit. One that I serve on the board of, Canopy Children's Solutions, is such an organization, and you get a dollar-for-dollar tax credit if you make contributions to that organization. There's 3 or 4 different categories, but one of those programs allows contributions to private schools. Boy, that makes them mad. You can donate to private schools to help students attend private schools, just out of your pocket. Now, I'm talking about government money here. And then you can get a dollar-for-dollar tax credit for up to 50% of the donor's state tax liability. And there's a limit on it, the amount that's allocated by our state government. And so there was a proposal this year, a bill that would increase that amount. And man, the folks at Mississippi Today are just going crazy. $16 million, that's what the total would be for 2026. That total currently is $9 million, and it's been that way for a while. So just adjusting it upward for inflation, if you will, from 9 to 16, and then goes to 18 and 27, and then capped out at $20 million a year total for 2028 and beyond. So this is what they said, talking about Representative Trey Lamar, House Ways and Means. This is his proposal. And the Parents Campaign and Mississippi Today say Lamar is relentless in his efforts to try to get additional funding to private schools. That's what Nancy Loom said. She, of course, with the Parents Campaign, a very strong, shall we say, opponent of education freedom. She basically wants to restrict every kid in the state. It wouldn't surprise me, Rhino, if she's got a specific seat in a specific room designated for every child, right? Because, of course, government knows better. more importantly, her. She certainly believes that.
I remind people, how long has it been that they've been building that ABC warehouse at the behest of the government?
Correct. 2.5 years. He is not listening to his constituents. Mississippians do not want their tax dollars going to private schools. And I'm going to just say again, how many of these people take the tax credits on their federal tax return they receive for the expenses they bear for private daycare centers and after-school programs and individuals such as nannies and babysitters? How many of them? Every damn one of them do. Oh, no, I'm not going to take that credit, federal government. I want to pay more taxes, right? But that's okay. That's fine. That's for your child independent care credit. That's what it's called. Every one of them take it. Spending that money with private entities who deliver those services, either individuals or organizations, companies, businesses, daycare centers. To my knowledge, the government in the state of Mississippi doesn't operate any daycare centers, do they? Right. But that's okay. Is it just me, or is that hypocritical? Sounds like it.
Well, technically, it would require them to actually understand where the money flows to and from for it to be hypocritical. Maybe they're just ignorant.
Sadly. And you're right. You would have to understand what I just described there, right? So I got to tell you, Representative Jansen Owen brought that up. I think I talked about that on the show a couple of weeks ago when there was some discussion about this, and he brought that up because they were looking to funnel more money. And he said, wait, now these are private entities, right? But that's okay. So good for him. I complimented him on it. I heard it when he did that on the floor, and I let him know, good. So, but it's a weak argument. You may have arguments against education freedom. This ain't a good one. This is not a good one. Oh, we're diverting this public money to private schools. Most of the money we send to the government ends up flowing to private organizations. What do you think we spend in the Department of Defense at the federal government level? What about the Medicaid program in Mississippi? It's a cool $1 billion of state, just under $1 billion. It'll hit $1 billion next year, I guarantee you. Guess who that goes to? A private insurance company. We're okay with that? I guess so. It's a double standard, in my view. And there are lots of other private companies that, of course, they do business with the government at all levels. It's just a weak argument. But congratulations to Corey DeAngelis for his joining the Heritage Foundation.
On the C Spire text line, Kasey makes a very good point. The schools and school districts themselves privatize the cafeteria, the busing, the maintenance.
Yeah, great point. Totally.
Substitutes.
Yeah.
Physical therapy, occupational therapy, psychological evaluations, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, so, that's a great point. Something that everybody's familiar with. You see them on the roads. Does the government manufacture school buses? Oh, they buy them from private companies. Really? Is that not public money going to private companies to supply school buses? Who builds and creates and maintains the roads and bridges for the most part in the state? It's private contractors. That's how we get the kids to the schools. Who builds the schools? It's just so silly. This is such a terrible argument. And I know it gets a lot of people fired up, but I'm sorry, folks. You're hanging your hat on the wrong issue there. You may find some other legitimate reason, though I can't think of any, to oppose this policy, but this ain't one of them. It just doesn't carry any weight because by the same token, you're actually taking advantage of much of what government, you're leveraging that to deliver government services, investing in private companies. Just crazy. I see you, Mailman Clayton. I'm going to text you that quote from the great John Wooten. I highly recommend to anybody out there a book that influenced me for sure in my career, and that's A Game Plan for Life. that was authored by the great John Wooden. But again, he said, and I'll text it to you, mailman, talent is God-given, be humble. Fame is man-given, be grateful. Conceit is self-given, be careful. Might we erect a sign down there in the Capitol for that, Rhino? Not to everybody, just having some fun here.
I'm sure somebody would get offended.
Probably. We're coming right back in the Element Well studio.
Sharing what was true, I said. That's all day long.
Poly up of Mississippi.
Are we going to do this?
Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Keep rolling. 3, 2, 1.
On SuperTalk Mississippi.
So don't stop me now. Don't stop me, 'cause I'm having a good time. Having a good time. Shooting star leaping through the sky like a tiger, defying the laws of gravity. I'm a racing car passing by like Lady Godiva. I'm gonna go, go, go. There's no stopping me. I'm burning through the sky. Yeah. 200 degrees, that's why they call me Mr. Fahrenheit.
Back with you in the Element Well studio. So share with the folks, Rhino, what you were just telling me about Congress and a possible strike on Iran.
Yeah, I mean, it's coming from Axios. I haven't seen it reported anywhere else, but Axios is reporting that Congress is set to give President Trump authorization to use military force in the Middle East.
Okay. It looks like it's going to happen at this point, and I know a lot of people have concerns about just attacking unilaterally, but on the other hand, those who support such an attack, including the president, are just tired of seeing the carnage wielded by this radical, primitive, almost prehistoric regime that does not value human life. That's the fundamental problem, is it not, with all of these tyrants in the history of our world? It's always been that, is that they just fail to appreciate human life. And it's the old ends justify the means. If it means killing a bunch of people, even my own countrymen, so be it. Isn't that what Mao did? It happened under Hitler. It happened in a shadow fashion to a great extent under Russia. President Reagan ultimately broke their back with economic strategies. Never fired a shot. Brought down the evil empire, as it is called. Unfortunately, with Iran...
It's not technically true that we never fired a shot.
Okay.
Because, I mean, there were Russians firing on Americans in Vietnam.
Well, that's true. In Vietnam.
Yeah. Well, even technically, there's arguments about whether or not it happened in Vietnam or Cambodia or Laos, but there are several reports that it happened.
Okay. I don't doubt that. Because they were supporting the North Vietnamese communists, essentially. They sought to expand their communist base. And China, I think, was backdoor supporting them as well. But is it not just the age-old legacy conflict between Western free market capitalism and the Eastern, in this case, Russian communism? It's just, that's been going on for a long time. In the case of Iran...
Since the Bolshevik Revolution.
Yeah. In the case of Iran, it's just religious zealots. Well, at least they say it's in the name of religion. What kind of a religion, though, condones murder, taking of life to achieve some objective, some political objective? That's sick, insane. Why we can't let that happen here? Unfortunately, we have people here that, even in the halls of Congress, that tend to support that radical ideology over that of this country, Western values. And Secretary of State Marco Rubio issued a pretty stern warning, did he not, to European leaders in Munich last week. Said, what did he say? We're not going to be polite managers of the decline of the West. I'm paraphrasing a bit, but that's basically what he said. We're not just going to stand by and just let you do this. He did remind, we're inextricably linked. We stemmed from you. We brought traditional European values. The left hates that, do they not? But is it not the case? Like 95% of our ancestry is where it came from. We can't deny that. Going back to Christopher Columbus, right? Unbelievable. So why do we want to dismiss that, spurn that? Makes no sense.
There are far too many stupid people on the planet, and especially in this country.
Oh, my gosh. Well,
they're led purely by emotion and knee-jerk reactions instead of thinking anything through for even a second.
That's a shame, because they're hurting themselves and everybody else in doing so. But I guess, to your point, too stupid to understand and realize that. And these are countries that are literally willing to not only go to war, but in the case of Iran, Mao, others, they're perfectly fine with obliterating their own population, especially those that might even have an inkling of opposing what they're trying to do, because they actually understand there's a problem with what they're trying to do, that it creates human misery. They're fine with that. Just unbelievable. Massacre their own. I don't know that we could count how many have been massacred and lost their lives in the name of communism. And to a great extent, you could say that what's happening in Iran is kind of another flavor of it. It's an Islamic flavor of it. Unbelievable. Well, we're going to step aside for Fox News and SuperTalk News. That's coming up. And then the afternoon portion of Middays. Please stay with us.
And now, the talk that keeps Mississippi talking.
That's what I like to listen to.
You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert, here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Winter is here again, oh Lord. Haven't been home in a year.
We're back with you from the Element Wealth Studio on this
Friday, y'all.
The president is scheduled to speak pretty soon here after the Supreme Court decision striking down his tariff policies. Oh, man. I'm sure there'll be some fireworks on that one. That ought to be entertaining. Looking forward to that. So there are a lot of states in the country that are starting to really push back, and local communities as well, on the construction of data centers in their areas. Lots of people showing up at all these town hall meetings, of course, recording all those on videos and then taking to social media to promote their protest, using, of course, data centers to do that. Is that not hypocritical? Of course it is. Quit using all that. Do they have their phones with them, you think? Guess what those are connected to? Data centers. This is a situation where it's like air. You can't live without it. Now, that being said, how do we continue our quest to achieve and maintain technology superiority, in particular as it relates to AI, over our most ardent adversary, China, who is going at it, man? I'm already worried about the gains they are making with this technology, some of it driven by technology they stole from this country that they use to further it and create it, enhance it. But you think they're worried about where they're building data centers? Nope. The power required for them to operate? Nope. I'm not saying that we want to replicate China. I'm saying that is a real threat to this country, because it's not ships and airplanes that pose the greatest threat to our way of life. It's the digital warfare that they would unleash on us that they will if they can gain superiority over us. The president knows that. He's talked about it. He gets it. Now, that being said, how do we continue our build-out?
I think part of the plan should be, again, and this is just part, but education of the masses on artificial intelligence.
Okay.
Because you fear what you don't understand. That's a pretty foundational concept. And there is this fear that hasn't seemed to grow a whole lot, but it's a belief that's held on to sincerely by those that just don't know any better. And it's this fear that AI is going to somehow surpass and overtake human intelligence, and we will be subservient to the AI. I say all that to bring up a point about a report that just came out last 24, 48 hours.
Okay.
On a 10-year study between Harvard and Google on the human brain. They literally took a cubic millimeter. That's less brain than the size of a grain of rice.
Okay.
And they've been mapping it for the last 10 years. The imaging for the mapping alone took almost an entire year of computational power. Cost them millions upon millions of dollars to do this. The findings. That little bitty 1 cubic millimeter of brain, of human brain, of gray matter, less than the size of a grain of rice, has 57,000 cells, 150 million synapses, 230 millimeters of blood vessels, and it has a rough raw data capacity of 1.4 petabytes.
Wow.
That's 1.4 million gigabytes.
Yep.
And that is 1/1,000,000th of the human brain.
That is incredible.
If you took every single bit stored on the planet for an entire year, you wind up with about 1/1,000,000th of what the human brain can do.
Unbelievable.
Computationally. So the fear that AI is going to somehow overtake human intelligence and make us subservient to its digital will, it's just a fool's errand. It's not going to happen. We don't have anything close to that level of computation, and we're nowhere near the power density required to do it, because you got to remember, the human brain runs on, 20 watts? It's nothing.
Yeah, it's the creative element is virtually impossible to replicate. And that's, I know I've shared this before, my old philosophy business ethics professor back in the 70s used to say, monkeys are aware, but humans are aware they're aware, is the way he distinguished the highest order, right, specimen on the planet, that being humans. And it's kind of where we are here with these machines. But there are some states. So that's the AI dimension of it. The data center, which is the infrastructure required to power this AI revolution. That's all the physical IT hardware, software necessary.
I mean, if you want to talk about it in terms of data centers,
yeah,
for that 1 millimeter cubed chunk of brain, the chunk of human gray matter smaller than a grain of rice, to get the computational power of that itty-bitty little tiny piece of brain would require a data center spanning 140 acres.
Wow. So, in the state of Mississippi, if you look at I think it's 5 projects, Madison, Warren, Rankin, Lauderdale, DeSoto, 5 projects. I believe I got that right. Total acreage there, about 3,500 acres consumed by those buildings that comprise those campuses. There are 30 million acres, roughly 47,000 square miles in our state. 30 million acres. We have more acreage that's consumed with golf courses than that. And I'm not opposed to that. I play golf, right? But I think that's overblown. So think about this. 3,500 acres, and the investment, as announced, $50 billion, close to that. It's going to end up being more than that. So while I appreciate folks' concern about driving up electricity rates, sure, and consuming water, not replenishing it, replacing it, use of land, those are kind of the main objections you hear. Now, the one that I think is just really doesn't have a lot of merit is, well, they don't employ a lot of people. Well, farms don't either. They don't employ a lot of people, but they use a lot of land because they produce something we got to have, and that's food and fiber. Well, guess what else we got to have? Information. We got to have that too. These are modern-day factories. The product they produce, intelligence. Is that valuable? How about this? Ask the farmers, because all that equipment they're using is all AI-powered. John Deere, I say it all the time, they're just a technology company that happens to manufacture tractors. But we got to figure out a way. You've seen, it always makes me think of this, Rhino. You've seen the bumper sticker on liberals' cars. It says coexist, right, with the O and the P sign. That's what I feel like needs to be the mantra here. We got to figure out a way to continue these investments and continue this build-out in such a way that doesn't have negative consequences. There's got to be positive gain from this. I'm not for driving up the cost of electricity from these investments, from these facilities. And where you've seen that happen in the country was terrible planning and government regulation that got in the way of that. I believe that these companies should fully bear the cost of the power they consume, that no consumers should be required to subsidize that. 100% makes sense. It's possible to do that and still continue with the build-out. And that build-out, by the way, is necessary for our national security and our economic future. Because if we don't maintain superiority, we're done. It's just simple as that. China will, and they will leverage their position in the food chain. In the past, that hasn't been a risk, but it's becoming more and more of one. We got to figure out a way to coexist, I guess, is the point here. And there's all sorts of new technology being developed to address power, water, and there's some complaints about noise. So, okay, we can still build in areas where your humans inhabitation is far enough away where the noise is not a problem. And then they complain about the noise when they test the generators, which is like very incremental. We got to figure something out. We're coming right back in the Element Well studio.
And I'd let that lonesome whistle blow my blues away.
Hey, this is Bob, and if you're like...
Attention, adoring fans! It's time for...
Middays with Gerard Gibert on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. Just wanted to circle back on that quote from Secretary of State Marco Rubio. We in America have no interest in being polite and orderly caretakers of the West's managed decline. That was his direct quote, his message to European leaders who, you know exactly what happened, Rhino. They just went woke on us. Just open up their dang borders, let everybody in, run around arresting people for speech they don't like. True story. You know that. You've seen that where police officers in the UK just show up somebody's house and say, we saw that post on Twitter. You got to go to jail, right? It's happened. It's absolutely happened.
Meanwhile, there's a video going around of a British woman who's calling the police because there's a migrant just literally standing at her door, staring at her through the window of her door.
Oh, my gosh.
And the police come, take him to the hospital. Hospital releases him. And the woman asked the police, what do I do if he comes back? And they go, call us. Because there's nothing she could do.
Unbelievable.
It would be illegal to defend herself against him.
Incredible. So the president is speaking right now at the White House, live. He is talking about the Supreme Court's decision to stop global tariffs. Something that we should pass on to you related to that, to the tariffs, is that we actually did experience in 2025, we actually imported more. We increased our trade deficit. So I don't know if you could attribute that to tariffs one way or another. All I can say is that the expectation was that tariffs would shrink our trade deficit, but that's actually not what happened. It hit a record high in 2025. Our imports did. And in fact, in December, the trade deficit for the month of December was the highest in a month since 1960. So what happened is in the early part of the year, when the tariffs were announced, recall that lots of companies were loading up on inventory to get ahead of it. And so they're sitting on this inventory and selling that through, and had more stock than they normally would, again, to procure those products pre-tariffs. And then they slowed down, and that's why we end up with deficits, overall trade deficit, certainly for the month of December. So the tariffs really did not reduce the trade deficit. That was part of the plan. I don't happen to think that's a huge problem. I mean, if we export more services than we do anything else in this country because we're a services economy. That's also, as you know, Rhino, why we're the richest country, because we have evolved from just being a manufacturing country. Not that we don't need manufacturing. Of course we do. But you look at our economy in the 50s, where a third of our GDP was manufacturing, 28% roughly was manufacturing, but 40 to 50% of our workforce was in the manufacturing sector. And today, even though we make more than we did back then, we're manufacturing more in this country than we did in the 50s, it represents less than 10% of our GDP and about the same in terms of our workforce, 8 to 12%, depending on the year. And that's not because we got fewer workers. We actually do, but it's not significantly fewer, and it peaked in 79 as far as the total number of workers in the manufacturing sector. No, it's a function of all these new industries we've invented. Think about jobs that people are working today that didn't exist in the 50s. Most of them.
It's cyclical.
Right.
Like if you go back before the 50s, you go back to the turn of the century. 30% of the workforce was in agriculture.
That's exactly right. 30% of we had a population of about 130 million. 30% of our workforce was involved in agriculture, and we struggled to feed our own country. Now, our workforce is 3-4% agriculture. We feed the dang world. In fact, that's one of the reasons is that the agricultural industry is suffering economically. As I've said before, they're too dang good. They're too productive. They make more than we can consume. And that's a function of technology. It's actually a function of, think about it, all the new industries that have sprouted up since then that have created all these tools that they use to farm. The tractor's out, 724, without a person in them, making these perfect rows. Just as an example. There are millions of other examples. What's affected the entire economy? There's not a sector that hasn't benefited from the noggins of human innovation. God gave us those brains to solve human problems. We have. So what's happened is our services economy has grown substantially relative to the rest of the country, rest of the world. And so guess what? They import that know-how. That's what they're buying, know-how. You've heard of the famous story, and nobody can tell if it's true or not, but it was Thomas Edison was called in when there was a problem in the mass production in the early days of car manufacturing. There was a problem on the production line. That's where mass production, you studied that in school, this idea of assembly lines, right? Cars moving down, people putting their parts on, start as a box of parts, come out the other side as a finished good automobile. And it was Henry Ford, called in Thomas Edison. We got a problem in the factory here. I need your help. He comes in, as the story goes, and took him about 10 minutes to solve whatever the problem was. And he gave him a bill. Got to remember the time period. Here's your bill, $100. And Ford said, wow, that's pretty expensive for a short period of time. Okay, give it back. let me restyle the invoice here. And he gave it back to him, and it was 30 minutes of work, $10. Know-how, $90. Right? Isn't that what we're exporting? That's a good thing. We should celebrate that. What we import is stuff that is not honestly suitable for economic growth. I don't know that we want to be the world's greatest manufacturer of Nike tennis shoes. I'm not picking on Nike, but the typical Nike factory you'd stand up today wouldn't have hardly anybody in it, as an example. We got to figure out a way to continue our quest for technology superiority. It's essential to our survival without causing these negative effects. And people are so fired up about this, and man, I appreciate it. And I don't support any situation where we would erect a data center and the consumers in the area would pay higher electricity rates. I don't know, Rhino, if folks know that right here in the state of Mississippi, just up the road from us a few miles, 5 of those buildings that Amazon is building out, 16 total buildings in the first phase, 5 of them already humming up there. You still got water pressure? Yeah. Has your power gone up? Maybe, but it ain't because of that. I know one thing that did go up. I just got my gas bill. We knew that when it got cold. My home's gas heated. I don't know about you folks out there. Mine was through the roof. It was cold. So we ran it, and I noticed a spike. But you know the price per, how do they measure it, Rhino? British thermal, whatever it is. I can't remember the metric for measuring natural gas. It spiked because demand went through the roof. It's a globally traded commodity, and that's why it went up considerably during that period. It'll come back down, but during that period, demand exceeded supply, traders react to that, price goes up, that's reflected in your bills. That's passed on, that's fully legal, no PSC involvement required when the underlying commodity product increases in price. We can make this coexist. We can figure this out. I'm looking at the state of Illinois, Governor Pritzker. They got a 2-year pause on any sort of tax incentives for new data centers. 2 years. Okay. Bring them down here. You just told the entire industry, don't come to Illinois. Don't they have a PERS program that's like underwater, like the worst, most insolvent in the country? In a city, Chicago, where people can't read and write, their students also have a budgetary problem. Can't you figure this out? Because if you ever looked at a map of Illinois, all the people live in Chicago and Cook County. You look at a map that's colored in red and blue based on the votes for president, every damn county in Illinois goes red except Cook County, where Chicago is. You've seen that before. It's like, okay, the whole state is red except for Cook County, where all the nutcases live and elect people like Pritzker, because it's a population density problem. So, look, included in these regulations, I'm perfectly fine with this. Prohibit shifting data center costs on consumers. Yeah, that's reasonable. I think that's definitely happening here in Mississippi. Bring your own new clean capacity and energy is another one they're calling it. This I oppose. They want these data centers, Rhino, to deposit money in funds to help pay utility bills for low-income people. Coming right back.
Here comes the thunder.
From theseabrook.com. And now, the talk that keeps Mississippi talking.
Now, on to the real part.
Dynamite! On SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's middays from the Element Well studio. So I do have to apologize with a bit of a clarification here, Rhino, on the tax treatment on the Trump accounts. I just want to make sure that we get this out there, and I'm sorry for miscommunicating that. So when you withdraw, you're able to at age 18. The funds in those accounts are available for withdrawal. It works like a 401k plan in that if you withdraw, in this case, before the age of 59 and a half, those withdrawals are subject not only to federal income tax on the gain incurred, accrued, I should say, in the account since the investments in it were made. So bottom line is whatever you put in versus the amount you take out, the value of the account, whatever that total gain is, that percentage, you apply that to the amount you take out. So if you put in $100 and when you start withdrawing, you got $200 in the account and you withdraw $50, since you doubled your money, you've got a gain of $100, essentially you would have a 50% tax is the way it would work on the amount you withdrew. But that gets to the weeds. What's important is that when you withdraw before 59 and a half, there's an excise penalty, 10%. Same with 401k plans. Early withdrawals, you pay the taxes on the withdrawal, but if you do it ahead of time, because the goal is to make you keep your money in there until you retire. But if you take it out early, you are subject to a penalty, 10%. Okay. When you withdraw before the age of 59 and a half from the Trump account, all right, the 10% penalty is waived if you are using the withdrawals for housing, health care, and education.
Is the age 59 and a half for the Trump account?
If you withdraw before that, the 10% penalty applies. Except if you use it for education, health care, and housing. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So if you withdraw before 59 and a half and don't use it for education, health care, and housing, you're paying the normal tax, income tax, on the gain, but you're also paying a 10% penalty for early withdrawal. However, if you early withdraw and use it for those three purposes, the 10% penalty is waived. Okay, so you're still paying federal income tax on the gain when you withdraw, just like you do on your 401k. You put your money away in a 401k, you watch the value of it rise. You don't pay taxes on that while it's still parked in your 401k. You pay taxes when you take it out. Same with these Trump accounts, except if you take it out early, and I don't remember what the age is for a 401k plan, Rhino, there is an age at which if you take it out before then, you're paying this penalty on top of the taxes that would apply to the gain on the amount withdrawn. So if you invest, however, that money with the Trump accounts, it's to incentivize you. Save money. You want to take it out before you're 59 and a half. Okay, fine. As long as you invest that in paying for your health care, your housing, or your education, the 10% penalty is waived. You still pay taxes on the gain, but the 10% penalty is not applied. 401k, I don't remember what the age is. There's an age in there where you're paying this 10% penalty.
Yeah, it's 59 and a half.
Okay, it's the same. So they apply the same age. So beyond 59 and a half, you take money out of your 401k plan, you just pay taxes on the gain in your account since that money's been making money for you, producing returns, producing a gain. Put $1 in, you make $1.50, for example. So you'd pay taxes on the 50%, or 50 cents in this case. So it's a 50% gain. Same deal. So, the example I gave a minute ago was a little off, but it just means that 100% of the gain in the example I used, where you put in 100, you took it and you made you grew it to 200, and you take money out, 100% of your gain is subject to the tax. You put $1 in, and at the time you start withdrawing, you got $1.50. Whatever you take out, 50% of that amount is subject to income taxes. I hope that's clear. I'm sorry to get kind of wound up in that. I just want to get that out there. It's the penalty that is waived when you hit 18 if you want to start withdrawing. It's the penalty for early withdrawal that's waived. You still pay taxes on that. So anyhow, Kasey also said, they don't just buy, talking about the schools, buses, but the entire busing operation, including use of their employees, they do that to avoid PERS contributions. Yeah, because the daggone PERS contributions is 19.5% of payroll. It's going there. It's not there yet. I think we got, 2 years left to add that 2.5% that was put into motion a couple of years ago by the legislature. Blake in the Delta says, agree, Gerard, would rather fight a war in Iran than address affordability issues, anemic GDP growth, or hold anyone accountable in the Epstein files. Gotcha. Let's see. Rusty, what are you talking about? He must not have seen the article from the black preacher with a private school in South Haven. He's all for giving private schools money. His academy is for poor black children. Who's he talking about there, Rhino? Let me know there, Rusty. Not sure what you're talking about. Mary in Greenwood, I'm probably changing the subject, but I have a friend who lives in Ridgely, makes $35,000 gross. Half of that is for rent, can't get a dime of assistance, but yet someone who doesn't work can get all kind of assistance. Something's wrong with that picture. It depends on what that assistance is, Mary. They wouldn't qualify for Medicaid. They wouldn't qualify for ACA subsidies. If they don't work, don't have any income, they would qualify.
They might qualify as a single individual for a reduced Section 8.
Yeah.
I don't think you get the full amount at that income, but I think you get something like 70-80%.
You're talking about housing assistance,
yes.
Right? Yeah, right. And you might get a little utility bill assistance. There's some programs for that. You might get temporarily TANF money, a little bit. You might get food stamps, a small amount. Yeah, I agree. And I'd have to know more about that individual, Mary, but I hear you that the $35,000 is the federal poverty level for an individual currently sits at about $15,000. So this is a person that makes about 250% of the federal poverty level, and most of those programs would not be available to that person. Yeah, I hear you. I get it. Regarding tariffs, did many of those countries negotiate a tariff agreement with the United States? Says Robert from Brandon. They did, but I don't think that matters with respect to...
Well, a lot of them signed trade agreements. They didn't really sign
tariff agreements. That's right. The trade agreements include some structure.
And from everything I've seen, all of the signed trade agreements, the countries that signed them have agreed to abide by them, whether or not the Supreme Court decided on tariffs or not.
That's right. It's irrelevant, the Supreme Court's decision. So the president now says, I'm going to go in a stronger direction, that I don't need Congress to impose tariffs. And he's now taking questions from a packed house at the White House of the press. I'm not sure why it's dark. Why aren't the lights on? I'm watching it right now, and I can't quite figure that out. But the president at the podium in the White House, it just appears that the lights are down. This looks like the typical press room at the White House where he's conducting this particular briefing, and he is now fielding questions from members of the press in the audience there. Not really sure. Already signed up with our tax accountant. I assume that's for the Trump accounts they're talking about there. Yeah, absolutely. You can sign up now. The website is available. Don't activate until July of this year. I believe July 4th.
Yeah, Independence Day.
Yeah, believe so. But you can go ahead and sign up, get it ready. Again, child born January 1, 25 through 12/31, 28, they get the $1,000 from the government. So that will happen automatically with proof of the birth there. I'm not sure what the government's requiring for that, but nonetheless, that's out there. But if your child's under 18, wasn't born in those years, you still can open up an account and enjoy the benefits of those accounts. You just don't get the $1,000. You can open the account up, start contributing, And by the way, if your employer contributes to it, that's pre-tax. That's something else that's very important. If your employer up to $2,500 per year per child contributes to your child's account, that is not taxable income to you. Okay, that goes straight to the account, bypasses your taxes. Just want to get that out there as well. Derek in Greenwood, the economy just blew up. Market's about to tank. U.S. owes billions in tariff refunds. That's not clear at this point, Derek, whether or not they do, but honestly, and again, I know that people get frustrated with me because I talk about these big numbers in a way that's kind of shows they're insignificant, but when you got a $7.3 trillion budget, yeah, if we had to refund $140 billion, that ain't going to tank the economy, and it's a couple of days of spending. Unfortunately, it's about a day and a half, actually, of spending. So not a good situation. A little bit more than that, I guess, on the current spending trend. But I hear you. Let's see what else we got. Can a future president repeal the Trump accounts? Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, this was enacted in law by the Congress. Could they make some changes to that?
Congress could repeal it.
Yeah, it can't be the president. It would have to go through the Congress just the same way as it was set into motion. It's in law. Final segment next.
Hello. You know what that means.
Middays with Gerard Gibert.
We'll do it live.
On SuperTalk Mississippi.
Yeah, we spend about $21 billion a day, latest figure. So the amount, if we had to refund, the president just said that would have to be litigated. I would come in at about $100 billion. I think actually less than that. So 4 or 5 days of spending. Either way, I don't think we're going to do that. I don't support that. I don't support the refunds. I will say that lots of reports here recently of businesses saying, we can't keep absorbing these tariffs. We're going to start going up on prices. And the same with countries or businesses in countries that are subject to the tariffs. The imports from those countries are subject to the tariffs. Some of them have been absorbing. They've also come out and said we can't keep doing it. So there could be usually it does take about that long, 3-4 quarters before the tariffs begin to show up at the retail level. So I hope that's not the case here, because if that timing works out, that's right in advance of the midterms. That could figure negatively into the midterms for the Republicans. So I hope that's not the case. On the C Spire text line, sewage treatment plants and other technology can supply the water for data centers. We need to save all the other water for farmers and for personal consumption. We talked about this, Rhino, not too long ago. Golf courses use like orders of magnitude more water than data centers do. We going to shut down all the golf courses? It does rain, we do. It is a renewable resource. So, but it's a good point, and I should point out that the AWS facility, I don't know about the other ones. I'm only familiar with in the state of Mississippi. The AWS facility, all the water they're using, which by the way simply augments the more typical standard air cooling. It's not 100% of the time they're using water for cooling the infrastructure inside. It's primarily done with air. It's augmented with water. It is drawing wastewater from the Beatty's Bluff plant here in Madison straight to AWS campus. That water is then readied for using in the cooling systems, and then it is scrubbed and cleaned and sent back cleaner than when it came in. Yeah, there is some loss because you're consuming that water as part of the cooling process. But so that's already going on. So that actually is a positive thing. Amazon has announced, and all the other hyperscalers are as well. They know this is an issue, and they know that to achieve their goals, they got to address this. They're not stupid business people, and they know they've got to get along with the people in the communities and be good community stewards. They get this. You know this. They're working on all sorts of technology to address this. Amazon's already pledged they're going to be water neutral in 3 years. wouldn't surprise me. I don't think it would you either. 5-7 years, any new campus they build won't even connect to the grid. They'll have that figured out.
If it does, it'll be to offset costs by supplying extra power to the grid.
Exactly. Good point. That's coming. That's absolutely coming. So I know people are all upset and concerned about this now. I just think their fears are overblown, and all I can say is this is essential to our way of life. We can't stop this. We got to solve this problem. I feel like to some extent, it almost mirrors what the left does. Oh, we got this climate change problem. No more gas to your houses anymore. No more wood-fired ovens and stupid crap like that, right? No more big gulps to address that. So it's always do without. If they had their way, we wouldn't have airplanes or we wouldn't eat meat as well. So that's not the solution. We got to be smarter than that. I totally believe that we can and will. Jerry in Waynesboro, how about all the fraud? I'll take a refund. Talking about the $20 billion a year of spending. You know, the truth is, in spite of all the Doge work and the big beautiful bill and everything else, we're still on a significant deficit trajectory to come in at about $1.9 trillion this year. Again, this is being driven by Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, in particular Medicare and Medicaid, which are funded to a great extent from general fund revenues. Man, the Medicaid program, some recent estimates on that, just out of control in terms of the projection of its spending. It's going to remain above even the levels that pre-Biden projections going back to that period of time. So those baselines continue to show a sharp increase in Medicaid spending. It's just the cost of health care in general is going up. And what's incredible is Centene, which is the managed care organization that runs 30 of the state's Medicaid programs, including the state of Mississippi. They receive about $7 billion a year from the federal and state government to run Medicaid in Mississippi. And 30 other states, they generate about $200 billion a year in top-line revenue. They lost $5.6 billion last year because their claims. They had a medical loss ratio of about 95%. That means 95 cents of every dollar they take in gets paid out in claims to providers. Can't make ends meet that way. I'm not defending Centene. I'm just sharing with you what the truth is. My concern is that they're going to go up, which means that our lawmakers here in the state of Mississippi are going to have to address that problem. They're already hearing it from Medicaid. You're going to have to send us more money to keep running this program. And that puts enormous pressure on our budget. We're out of here today. Have a great weekend, everyone. Until Monday, stay safe and God bless.
A SuperTalk Mississippi media production.